Anita Anand is the Minister of National Defence. She joins us now from Toronto. Minister, it's been a long time. Good to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you too, David.
So the statement your office put out today said a number of howitzers have been sent to Ukraine. Sources have told my colleague Murray Brewster that you sent 4 of these field artillery systems to Ukraine. How many have been delivered?
As the Prime Minister said earlier this week, this is a very sensitive situation. It is a time of war, and there are certain details that we are keeping confidential for security reasons. And as a result, I put out information this afternoon to provide that information about the M777 howitzers and additional aid that we are providing. The reality is that we are in the next phase of providing military aid to Ukraine. We have already provided near $120 million worth of aid, and we are in this next phase. Armored vehicles, heavy artillery, additional ammunition, contracts for drone camera maintenance, and armored vehicles, as I said. So we are moving into the next phase, and we'll be with Ukraine. We'll stand with Ukraine. I am traveling to Germany and the United States next week to speak with our allies about the additional support that we are providing and announced today. But going forward, we are here for the long haul.
Okay, so we have 37 of these howitzers in our inventory, but I'm guessing by what you said in your previous answer about operational security, you're not going to tell me how many of them are gone or how many you're prepared to send. But I guess, is this the only shipment of howitzers you're willing to send? Are there more that Ukraine can count on?
We are working very closely with our allies, including the United States, on the provision of aid. And the situation is evolving. And so there is not at this point a firm number, because we will continue to review what is in inventory, what allies are providing, and we will act collaboratively accordingly. I want to stress that at all times I am making sure, together with our Chief of Defense Staff, that CAF inventory is sufficient for CAF purposes. And therefore, we have had the assurance that we will be able to replenish CAF inventory with the provision of this aid, and therefore we feel that it is prudent to go forward with this aid, and in particular heavy artillery at this time.
Okay, I just want to pick up on that replenishment point, because there has been some concern that if you take equipment away from the Canadian military, it loses readiness capacity, it can't train and prepare as well as it would like, because it doesn't have access to this anymore. So how quickly do you think these howitzers can be replenished? And I wonder, Minister, does the global supply chain challenges that everybody's dealing with affect your ability to get military equipment?
Well, you'll note that I was careful in the wording of the press release to speak about capabilities. Mm-hmm. We are constantly ensuring that we are replenishing CAF inventory capabilities. And I will say that that is the case with the announcement we made today. We are also sending additional Carl Gustavs, and we will seek to replenish those as well as quickly as possible. And in fact, we've had assurances from our suppliers that we will be able to do so. In addition, your point about global supply chains is a very good one. The reality is that there are a number of countries that wish to continue to support Ukraine with military aid, and Ukraine has been speaking with all of us as defense ministers, and the international support is very strong. At the same time, that means that global supply chains for heavy weaponry and other types of artillery and military systems are stretched. And so we do need to collaborate as allies, and that's exactly what this phase of the provision of military aid is doing. We are, in fact, meeting in Germany next week. I'm going to be in Washington speaking with my counterpart, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, to continue to discuss how we can collaborate in the face of global supply chains.
Okay, I wonder if you can help me understand something here about the state of the military's inventory at this moment, because it was about a month ago you were on the show and you said Canada more or less exhausted its capacity to donate more lethal aid to Ukraine, but here we are sending howitzers. So has your tolerance for what you're willing to share changed, or has the nature of what they're asking for changed and you were able to meet this request? Where are we?
I was hoping you would ask that question David, because the reality is that we are prepared to send additional aid because we now know that we can replenish CAF inventory. At the time I made that statement, it was in light of our existing inventory. I continued to have discussions with our Chief of Defense staff and assess CAF inventory and what we can obtain to replenish that inventory, and we are able to make another donation of military equipment, and the announcement today represents that additional calibration of what we can procure and therefore what we can send.
Okay, the other part of this announcement today was that you said your government is also in the process of finalizing contracts for commercial pattern armored vehicles. What is a commercial pattern armored vehicle? Help me, that's a very technical term. So what exactly is Canada buying and sending to Ukraine here?
I will have more details to share about that contract in the coming days. We are in the final phases of negotiating it. The reality is that Ukraine, in particular Minister Resnikov, has requested a number of different types of vehicles, and we are able to fulfill at least one of those requests with the armored vehicles, the details of which I will share more specifically in the coming days.
But we're not talking tanks, we're not talking light armored vehicles. This is more like troop transport, equipment hauling with a layer of armor. It's not the LAVs, for example, that we make and Saudi Arabia buys.
At this point, we are providing information relating to the armored vehicles that are the subject of the procurement, and I'll look forward to having another conversation with you once that contract is finalized.
Okay, all right, we'll hold you to that. Now, obviously, this announcement means more defense spending, and we've just come from a budget where there was extra money for defense, but we're still short of the path to get to the 2% NATO target. And I know when you spoke with Vashi a few weeks back, you said you put a series of options on the table to get past 2%, to get 2%, and what appears to be the option that we're in right now. Are you satisfied with the level of defense spending in this fiscal plan, even though it falls short of our commitment to our NATO allies?
One stat that isn't well known is that with our $8 billion contribution of budget 2022, Canada has the 6th largest defense budget of all 30 NATO countries. We are adding $8 billion to defense spending in budget 2022. That is on top of the 70% increase in defense spending that was already committed under Strong, Secure, Engaged between 2017 and 2026. Canada is accelerating its defense spending. We are on an upward trajectory, and I think that we should view the $8 billion as a very meaningful contribution to Canada's defense spending that will touch NATO, that will touch NORAD and continental defense, that will touch ensuring that the CAF has the equipment and resources that it needs to continue its operations within and outside Canada. We will not stop in terms of ensuring the Canadian Armed Forces have the equipment and resources they need to continue to defend our country. And in addition, we will commit, as Budget 2022 said, $500 million in military aid to Ukraine, and that is exactly a part of what we were announcing today.
No, I mean, look, $8 billion is clearly significant, but it doesn't get us to 2%. I mean, just on the math of that, and we've heard from NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, he sort of called that 2% target arbitrary, and I know when I spoke to senior people in your government that they kind of agreed with that statement. I mean, is this something you think Canada ever really intends to hit, this 2% target, or is it just sort of an aspirational thing to try to pull us up a little bit an inch at a time?
Well, we have to remember back at the Wales conference that Prime Minister Harper attended, when he was the Prime Minister, he spoke of the 2% target as being up to 2%. The commitment is up to 2%. And so it very much is a target that we are working towards because we are deeply committed to our NATO allies. We're deeply committed to deterrence and defense as principles on which the alliance is based, and we will continue to do our part. I want to reiterate that it's not just a monetary goal that we are making a contribution towards. We also have significant boots on the ground. We are one of 4 countries that leads the enhanced forward presence battle groups that exist on NATO's eastern flank. We've been in Latvia for 5 years. We've recommitted to an additional number of years. We've doubled our commitment at air, land, and sea in recent weeks under Operation Reassurance. And Canada has a significant presence in NATO and will continue to fulfill our commitment in that regard.
Okay, the other commitment, the one you just mentioned, was the $500 million in this budget for aid
exactly.
for Ukraine. But I'm just wondering, Minister, with what you said about the strain on supply chains and just the competition, because everybody's trying to buy the same equipment. I mean, how quickly do you think Canada can meet that $500 million commitment? Could it be this summer? Is it going to take the whole year? And I wonder, I'm going to double barrel this, given the news today with the howitzers, will you draw down even further on Canada's inventory to send more stuff, on the existing inventory to send more stuff to Ukraine?
I think we should take a step back and recognize that there are 3 main categories of aid that we can utilize for provision of military aid to Ukraine. The first category is CAF inventory, and we are very careful about the donations that we are making from CAF inventory. The second category is in the area of procurements, and $500 million in budget 2022 will go to additional procurements. The armored vehicles that we announced today are specific examples. The cameras that we have donated for drones used in direct military combat in Ukraine are also another example of that second category. And then the third category is the aid that we will continue to make together with our allies. And we are very much acting in conjunction with our American counterparts in the provision of the M777 howitzers.
Right. So, but the $500 million, given the state of play right now and the ability to buy and build and procure equipment, I mean, is that money that is going to be parceled out over 12 months, or is there a more urgent timeline given the stakes of what is happening?
The whole situation is urgent. We will continue to provide aid. I'm in almost daily contact with my counterpart, Minister Resnikoff, in Ukraine, and we will continue to provide aid on an expedited basis. And we will be innovative in terms of our procurements and in terms of meeting Ukraine's needs based on Canadian capabilities. So, for example, the cameras that we are providing for drones are made right here in Canada. And we are entering into another contract for the maintenance of those cameras for drones so that when they are damaged in battle, they can be manufactured or retooled for use and in battle again. That's the type of innovation we are doing in contracting. And as I've mentioned before, my Deputy Minister, Bill Matthews, and I did procure millions of vaccines for Canadians over the past year and a half. And we will use our innovative procurement mechanisms to bear on the procurement of military aid for Ukraine.
Okay. Anita Anand, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
That's Minister of National Defense, Anita Anand.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.